What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily. So this is the 2022 Motorola Moto G Stylus, and I really want to like this phone. It's a very unique device with its built-in stylus, of course. It's affordably priced, about $300, but Motorola has been doing this weird thing where they just make their phones worse than the year before. Seriously, this 2022 Moto G Stylus has a half a dozen less features or measurably worse specs than the 2021 Moto G Stylus. And the 2021 Moto G Stylus also had less features and some worse specs than the 2020 Moto G Stylus. This is very insulting to current and potentially new Motorola customers. It's bad business, it's lazy, and it's why if you have a previous Moto G Stylus, I would say skip this one. You aren't going to get a true upgrade anyway. If you don't have an older Moto G Stylus, maybe you're coming from some other Motorola device or a different brand entirely, I'll say that this is the only 2022 Moto device you should consider if you're in the US, but that's mostly because all of the other Motorola phones, like the G Power and G Pure this year, are even worse devices for the money than this one when you consider their specs and features. It's a weird paradox, but that sort of sums up the 2022 Moto lineup right now. Motorola is in a seemingly favorable position to undercut the likes of Apple and Samsung with affordable devices and special, unique devices at that. This is the only other stylus smartphone on the market besides the $1,200 S22 Ultra. But over the last 2 years, Motorola has been doing a really bad job, and I think this time around, people are going to take note of that. Now, I'm going to go over everything you need to know about the 2022 Moto G Stylus in this video. I do think it has some positives, but I also wanted to be upfront and honest when I say that objectively, this is just not the smartphone it could have been, or maybe probably should have been. Physically, there's not a whole lot to say about the Moto G Stylus. It's once again a very tall 6.8-inch device. That's the screen size, corner to corner. And it offers a relatively high screen to body ratio, about 85%, but you still got some black borders framing it, particularly at the top and bottom. The selfie camera is migrated over to the middle, but aside from that, from the front, it looks very familiar. Around back, Motorola did refresh the look and feel of the rear housing. It's still plastic, but a shiny metallic-like plastic. The frame of the phone feels thick and sturdy, like it might be metal, but it's not the 6000 series aluminum like the 2020 G Stylus. And an updated camera setup layout is the finishing touch on a subtle yet noticeable design refresh. It honestly is a phone that feels pretty nice. It's quite heavy, very sturdy, curvy and tapered enough along the sides to allow your fingers to stretch across that big display. I honestly have nothing to complain about with the look and materials. If anything, this is kind of an upgrade over last year at least. It's also still water repellent, that's what Motorola classifies it as anyway, but no upgraded super strong Gorilla Glass, no wireless charging either, so those aspects still indicate that this is a budget-friendly device and has some sacrifices. A couple other things to note: Motorola kept the micro SD card support, which is nice. The phone ships with 128 gigs of storage. That's the only configuration option, though I'm pretty sure plenty of space for most people. You lost a little bit up front with Android and the pre-installed apps, but I think there's still some value in the expandable storage option. The headphone jack is also still there at the bottom alongside the USB-C port for charging. There's also a fingerprint sensor on the side of the phone. No Motorola dimple here, it's the power button combination. And to be honest, while I'm glad it's here, it's just a little slow, which I think you can see. I don't know if it's the phone itself, a delay in waking it up, or what, but it takes a noticeable second or two to get into the phone. And of course, there's the whole point of this device, that built-in stylus there at the bottom, which I want to go into next. So like I mentioned earlier, this Moto G Stylus is one of only 2 current smartphones that offer a built-in stylus and some corresponding software features and apps to go along with it. The other being the S22 Ultra, which is just in an entirely different league of smartphones. Now, yes, I know you could go out and get a used S21 Ultra or previous Samsung Note device, or I guess an LG Stylo, but for new, current 2022 smartphones that aren't insanely expensive, this is pretty much it. The disappointing thing about the Moto G Stylus, though, is that this is once again just a really rudimentary, lackluster stylus experience that has not been upgraded, improved, or otherwise changed since the first Moto G Stylus was introduced a few years back. The stylus has an easy-to-use, clickable little top. It sits in its designated spot at the bottom of the phone. It pops up and pulls out flawlessly, and you can't really get it stuck or anything. It's perfectly round, it slides right in, and it doesn't go going like backwards or anything like that. Functionally, it's fine. The stylus itself, though, is also once again just a really simple metal pointer tool. I like to say it's no smarter than a toothpick. It's not Bluetooth compatible, it's not connected to the phone in any way, there's no buttons that do anything or unlock any special features. It's essentially just an extension of your finger, but maybe a little more precise. And that's the first way in which you can utilize a stylus, by simply tapping, touching, swiping, and scrolling your way through the phone, just like you would your thumb. I know a lot of people use the stylus this way, which is totally fine, it works well. And like I said, sometimes it's a little more precise, maybe with typing or tapping small buttons or icons. Beyond that use, the stylus also can be paired with a handful of Motorola-specific and third-party apps that allow you to get a little more out of this setup. When you pull the stylus out, you're prompted with this unique side menu shortcut launcher that displays some Moto stylus apps and other apps too. The menu is completely customizable, by the way. You can add whatever app you want. It doesn't have to be stylus-specific or anything, but you will see the 6 or 7 stylus-specific apps and shortcuts that Motorola offers as a pairing with this Stylus Experience. There's the Moto Notes app, of course, which again, you don't have to use. You could use a third-party notes app if you want. There's a coloring book, there's a screenshot shortcut and editor, and a couple of the other familiar apps that we've seen year over year on every other Moto G stylus. And that kind of defines my main issue here. Motorola has done absolutely nothing to improve the stylus experience. There's nothing new, nothing changed, nothing that's been improved at all. And on top of that, the writing and drawing experience also hasn't changed either. Because the stylus isn't connected or otherwise made specifically for the phone, and vice versa, you get a noticeable lag or delay when you write. You can see the gap between the pen tip and the line on the screen. It's also not very smooth or accurate. The stylus tip is not particularly sharp either. It might even be a little worse than previous Moto G stylus tips, and you can really see the difference compared to the S22 Ultra stylus. By the way, here is the writing experience on the Ultra. The difference is just night and day with its accuracy. For simple scribbles and note jotting, coloring to pass the time, simple picture or document edits or highlights, it's fine, but it's just not the kind of experience I would expect in 2022. Even for a smartphone in this price range. More than that, it's just the fact that Motorola hasn't changed or otherwise upgraded the stylus experience at all. It's just lazy, and it diminishes the value of this phone in my opinion. This is a unique device with a unique set of features, but Motorola has just done nothing to embrace or otherwise offer that value it could to its dedicated customers who specifically want this feature. So those are my thoughts on the overall stylus experience. Let's jump into everything else with this phone now. And to start, the Moto G Stylus's 6.8-inch display did receive one important upgrade that I want to mention. The main specs, like I said, the size, 6.8 inches, and the resolution, 2460 by 1080, remain unchanged. It's also still once again an IPS LCD panel, which honestly is okay, but my two main issues are the brightness and the glare. This phone doesn't get as bright as, say, Samsung's TFT displays, and even at like 70 or 80% brightness, which you can see, the glare on this phone is pretty bad. I think it's a combination of lower quality glass and, like I said, less than ideal brightness limits overall. I do think this phone delivers a nice viewing experience with the color. It's bold, it's vibrant, and you can make some adjustments in settings if you need to. The upgrade here is that this is now a 90 Hz panel. So with this option enabled, you're going to experience a faster, snappier, more responsive feel with all your taps and touches. This is a nice addition, sort of a mid-tier upgrade, but an upgrade nonetheless that brings this phone up to the level of some other mid-range devices. All in all, I think this phone offers a good viewing experience for what it is and a nice fluid 90 Hz experience, but like I said, it could be a little better. By the way, for the out loud listening experience, this G Stylus once again has just a single speaker setup down below. And I mention this only because the 2020 G Stylus had a solid dual stereo speaker setup, which Motorola has never brought back. Disappointing, to say the least, and another example of taking an unnecessary step back with their smartphones. Now, looking past everything else so far, my single biggest gripe with the 2022 G Stylus is with the performance. And this is going to sound super harsh, but this phone is currently stuck with severely outdated software, paired to a chipset that is noticeably and objectively worse than years past, which is just a bad combination from start to finish. This phone got the MediaTek Helio G88 processor inside. Last year we had the Snapdragon 678, the year before that it was a Snapdragon 665. At least we get 6 gigs of RAM, which is an upgrade, but I'd much rather have a more modern, more powerful processor myself. Also, I'd rather have some semblance of software support. This is a 2022 smartphone after all. The day-to-day experience with this device is acceptable, but it has noticeable blips and lags when closing and opening apps, loading certain pages, and the more complex apps, like games for example, the more you'll be stuck waiting on launch screens. Even more than that, this is a phone that does experience frame drop in-game. You can see that with the FPS counter on. You can feel it when you're gaming too. I know this is not a flagship phone. It's not even really a mid-range device per se, but it's a phone that absolutely could be better with a minor processor bump and software update. It's not that difficult to offer that. On the bright side, the 6 gigs of RAM helps this phone with app switching and keeping things current, but I think most people will be a little disappointed with the performance overall, considering what this phone is. One positive aspect of the Moto G Stylus, and really all Motorola phones honestly, is the battery. Capacity-wise, you get a 5,000 milliamp battery inside, which is big even for a phone with this size screen. It's also an upgrade. We had 4,000 milliamp batteries on previous G Styluses, and day to day, I didn't have any issues making this phone last. It's a day-and-a-half smartphone for me, and probably for most other people too, so that's great. The downside is that Motorola gives you a 10-watt charger in the box. At least it's included, but you're stuck juicing this thing up over the course of multiple hours. And I already said this, but no wireless charging or any other power features either, so take that for what it's worth, but the important part, longevity, is good. Now, one of the weakest areas of pretty much all Motorola phones is with the camera setup, though it's not all bad news. The setup here includes a new 50 megapixel main lens, which is nice, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, which is very useful, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. The selfie camera appears to be the same 16 megapixel shooter as before, and inside the camera app, Motorola does offer a lot of shooting modes and features that I think bring the camera up a notch. Night vision, group selfie, some Moto filters, pro controls, 50 megapixel mode, and dual capture are more than you'll see on some other $200 to $300 devices. Some stuff, like 4K video, continues to be absent, even though it used to be offered. And with real-world results, I don't personally think Motorola has improved or otherwise put as much effort into their camera software and camera capabilities as some other companies. On the one hand, you get a very bright, very colorful looking shot more often than not, but the pictures are pretty soft. They lack a little detail and depth, and the dynamic range on this phone is not great. You're gonna often get overblown areas or lost dark shadows. Night mode is hit or miss sometimes. When it works, it looks good, but when it misses, you may as well have not used it at all. The selfie camera is also a little weird at times. The default look is very smooth, very beauty filter-like, not realistic and not very detailed. And video-wise, Motorola misses the Mark II in my opinion. This is still better than a lot of other budget and lower mid-tier devices, so that's good, but like I said, Motorola just doesn't seem too interested in noticeably improving or otherwise focusing some efforts on their camera capabilities. All in all, the new 2022 Moto G Stylus gives you a slightly refreshed design, 90Hz display, and bigger battery, which is all fine. But the most important stuff, like an improved stylus experience, better, faster specs, software updates, or more capable cameras, are all noticeably absent. And in years past, where we did get an all-aluminum frame, Snapdragon processor, dual speakers, 4K video recording, and more, are all evidence of the fact that right now, Motorola has simply been offering you less phone than the previous year. The Moto G Stylus is no doubt unique, and the Stylus Experience is a selling point for sure. But year over year, this phone has just become less and less appealing, and it's a huge shame. It's time for Motorola to step up, deliver some improvements, and give its customer good value, or some sort of improvements in their devices. So there you go. Those are my critical thoughts on the 2022 Moto G Stylus. What do you guys think of this phone? Do you have a Moto G Stylus yourself? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.